Yeah. Stand up, look up. And that is what we're here to talk about. The Nigerian youth have risen up.
Koko nyamiri, nyamiri, koko nyamiri, nyamiri, koko nyamiri, nyamiri, koko nyamiri, nyamiri. Ibole, ibole, ibobono, ndamami he. Ibole, ibole, ibobono, ndamami he. Ebulanyelu, anamabarana ihe dị njọ ma na-emezi konye oteke anamabarana ihe dị njọ.
And why? You're proud.
Anyị na-eto Chineke onye kere ụwa. Anyị na-eto Chineke eke kere ụwa. Anyị na-eto Chineke onye kere ụwa. Anyị na-eto Chineke eke kere ụwa. Maka ihe ọma niile o mere anyị. Anyị ekele Chineke. Anyị ekele onye kere ụwa maka ihe o mere anyị. Anyị na-eto Chineke, anyị ekele Katọnda, anyị ekele Olodumare maka ihe o mere anyị. Ọ nọ n'aka nri n'ihu anyị, n'azụ anyị, n'aka ekpe. Ọ nọ n'aka nri n'ihu anyị, n'azụ anyị, n'ihu anyị. Anyị ekele Chineke, anyị ekele Chineke, anyị ekele onye kere ụwa maka ihe o mere anyị. Anyị ekele Nyame, anyị ekele Ubangiji, anyị ekele Nkosi maka ihe o mere anyị. Anyị na-eto Chineke, ekele dịrị Katọnda, anyị ekele Olodumare maka ihe o mere anyị. Ọ nọ n'aka nri n'ihu anyị, n'azụ anyị, n'aka ekpe. Ọ nọ n'aka nri n'ihu anyị, n'azụ anyị, n'ihu anyị. Anyị ekele Chineke, anyị ekele onye kere ụwa, anyị ekele onye kere ụwa maka ihe o mere anyị. Anyị na-eto Nyame, anyị na-ekele Ubangiji, anyị ekele Nkosi maka ihe o mere anyị. Anyị na-eto Chineke, anyị na-eto Chineke, anyị ekele Olodumare maka ihe o mere anyị. Abasi Kenyon ndewo, anyị na-eto Tamuna, anyị ekele Muwari, ekele Kwajinami, anyị ekele Chineke, anyị na-eto Katọnda, anyị na-eto Olodumare maka ihe o mere anyị. Anyị ekele ya o, anyị ekele Chineke, anyị ekele onye kere ụwa.
Ndewonu, good morning and welcome to Cheism Live. We're so happy to have you here. Okedibia, Dr. Owa Osimiri, Onyo Osimiri, had a fundraiser for OMSI, the organization that she chairs, that is, trying to help children and women in Africa to be able to, live a better life, achieve good medical care, and make sure children are able to go to school and also able to, have something to eat. So we were all involved in the fundraising yesterday. I was a part of it, and it was so much fun. And she got a little exhausted. So here I am stepping into her shoes, which hopefully I'm able to fill. The shoes are so big. She's so good at what she does. And I have been spoiled lazy into being in the background and letting her flourish behind the microphone that I myself have pretty much lost touch in hosting. So I hope I do a pretty good job for the audience, and that we're able to educate those people who are listening to the show. Before I go any further, I want to say a prayer and thank Chineke for today and for giving us the opportunity to be in the presence of you, to be able to put out a spiritual message that hopefully will enrich your lives. Otide niile dịrị Chineke ọbasi dị elu, Chukwu obiọma, Chidi ebere, Olisa nwa amara. Ka ụzọ anyị niile bụrụ ihe, ka ihe ọbụla metụrụ aka bụrụ sọ mma mma, ka ụwa niile site n'ụzọ ezi okwu ọma Chiizim, nwa obi aṅụrị site ugbu a ruo mbili na ebighị ebi. Ọfọ ya gazie. Ise, all praises to Chineke, the Creator, the Supreme Being, Chi the Good, Chi the Merciful, Chi the Magnificent, with grace. Let everywhere of our lives be light. May all our acts be crowned with good. And may the world prosper through the ministry of Chiism, now and forever. Ofo, Yagazie, Ise, and Amen. Today's topic is a heavy one. And it's something that I personally have always thought about. And I think a few shows ago, we had kind of touched on it. And I'm talking about ancestors. And as you can see on the screen right now, we have a bevy of ancestors here that I'm sure most of you recognize, from Ahan KOK to Noha, to Harriet Tubman, to the Oba of Benin, Nelson Mandela, Rosa Parks, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, so on and so forth. I could go on forever. But these are familiar ancestors. And we all know the great deeds that they did in trying to make sure that this generation, that today is a better day for us than it was for them. These are some of the people that were involved in the struggle of the emancipation of the African, both physically and mentally. So today's topic is about ancestors and what it means. The word ancestor means one from whom a person is descended. Whether on the father or mother side is not really important. At any distance of time, a proginator, a forebear, many indigenous cultures invoke their ancestors daily through rituals. So when you talk about ancestors, it's not an African thing alone. All cultures practice it. Europeans, in South America, in Asia, all over the world, Australia, we all are involved in one form of ancestral reverence or another. And that's because without our ancestors, none of us will exist. None of us will exist at all. These are the people that came before us. Our ancestors hold great wisdom. The footprints that we walk on today were left by our ancestors. They are the ones that lived and through trial and error were able to determine those things that are good for us, that help to perpetuate our existence on earth. Okay, and so we call upon our ancestors again because of the wisdom that they hold, because of the things that they did before us, because the knowledge that we enjoy today is made possible because they came before us. In Abrahamic religions, like Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Christianity in particular, ancestral reverence is forbidden, believe it or not. But then again, the funny part of this is the fact that Christianism, Judaism, particularly Christianism, is built on ancestral reverence. I mean, when you open up the Bible and you read about all the characters in the Bible, those are the people that came before Abraham, David, Christ, supposedly, Samson, Ruth, Lot. All these heroes in the Bible are ancestors of somebody, and they are revered. I'm yet to see in any religious practice where you just bemoan or you just talk about the Creator without any mention of those people that came before us. In most cultures, every culture has an idea of who the first man and who the first woman, was, right? In Igbo tradition, from where I come from, the first man was Ifenta and the first woman was Adam. And that's why in Igbo culture, the first daughter is referred to Ada, right? Because that's the first woman that was created by Chineke. In Judaism, it is Adam as the first man and Eve as the first woman. Every major culture in the world that believes in Chineke, that believes in the supreme being, that believes in God, have a concept of who the first man and the first woman were. So the reason why I'm bringing this point up is the idea that when you talk about ancestors, the first man and the first woman are part of the ancestry of any community. So as far as our relationships with our past is concerned, you cannot negate or minimize the importance of ancestral reverence, because they came before us, and the knowledge that we enjoy today, the way we understand the world, is based on the idea that somebody set the example, somebody learned about living before we came about. Now, before I continue this topic, let me bring in Dibia Chidozie Okoro. Okay, Magi. Can you hear me?
Hey, Ano Simike.
Can
hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Happy to have you.
Ano Simike.
Yes, sir. Dr.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you very well. Dr. Simona hasn't come in yet, so you and I are just going to continue.
I'll join you back. Let me try another line.
Okay, go right ahead. I can hear you, though. But anyway, so let's continue. Ancestral reverence is part of our spiritual psyche, because there's an understanding that people came before us. Again, an ancestor is anyone that you are descended from. You can look at your ancestors from a community perspective. You can also look at it from individual perspective in terms of your direct family ancestors or the ancestors that founded a village. As a matter of fact, all living things have ancestors. Animals have ancestors. So this is not just about human beings. Even plants have ancestors. Again, ancestors are those living things in terms of animals or plants, or, as far as humans are concerned, are those that came before you. So ancestral reverence is very important. The issue that I have, and why I decided to talk about this today, is the idea that in some circles, African ancestors are considered evil, or just the idea of talking about your ancestors is evil. I want you to think about this for a second. The founding fathers here in the United States, some of them spoke out against slavery, which is probably one of the worst things that ever happened to a people, particularly people of African descent. A lot of them were against slavery, but most of them practiced it. Most of them owned slaves. And when Americans, specifically European or white Americans, talk about their ancestors, they don't look at them as evil, even though they owned slaves and were involved in the inhumane treatment of people of African ancestry. But when they talk about their ancestors, they talk about them glorifying them in very glorious terms. Why? Because whether slavery is evil or not, as far as they are concerned, their position in the world today is made possible by their ancestors. Even though they own slaves, but they created a world today that they enjoy. And then, of course, those of us that live here in the United States, you might make the argument that we're enjoying what their ancestors put together to create the world that we find ourselves in now in the United States. But they don't look at their ancestors as evil. What is it about African ancestors that is evil? Why is it that when you talk about African ancestors in a lot of circles, they're regarded as evil people, as responsible for the condition that we as Africans find ourselves in? Why is it that in our educational systems, we don't stress the contributions that our forebears, our forefathers, our foreparents made to civilized behavior? Why don't we talk about their contributions to our condition in terms of our knowledge of how the world works, in terms of medicine, history, all human endeavor? What did our ancestors contribute to that? And why don't we talk about it? People from India don't talk bad about their ancestors. The Japanese don't. They glorify them. The Chinese glorify them. You talk about Genghis Khan. You talk about Kublai Khan. You talk about the Maharajas in India. You talk about the kings in Europe, King Henry VIII. You talk about Lancelot. You talk about Edward I, Queen Elizabeth I, Queen Victoria. You talk about Charlemagne. You talk about Napoleon. You talk about the czars of Russia. You talk about the heroes, those people that laid the footprints to the generations of today. They talk about them in glorious terms. Who do you talk about when it comes to your forebears as a Black person, as an African? A lot of times we talk about our forebears from the perspective of lack, of struggle. We talk about the Harriet Tubmans. We talk about the Nelson Mandelas. We talk about their courage, standing up to oppression. We talk about those things. But do we ever talk about our ancestors in terms of their contribution to, let's say, mathematics, medicine, those things that are important in our lives today that give us the knowledge to be able to survive and sustain ourselves? Do we talk about those things? Do we know who those people are? Are they infused into our educational system? What is it about our people, our ancestors, beyond looking at our ancestors from the perspective of let my people go? Equivalence of biblical tales in the Bible about Moses and the children of Israel. Why do we look at ourselves in those terms? We're not all about the Harriet Tubmans. We're not all about the Mandelas, the Martin Luther King. That's not all we're all about. We're not about putting our hands out and asking for somebody to break the chains. There's a whole lot to our ancestors. There's a whole lot to our genesis, our journey through history that goes beyond asking for somebody to release us from bondage. Do we talk about the Blackamoors, our ancestors in Europe? Do we talk about Europe when Europe was ruled by people of African ancestry? Do we even talk about the idea of the devil, how it came about? The idea that our ancestors were so powerful, were so dominant in Europe that they looked at that Black man and woman as evil because of our power. Do we know that about our history? There's a book my dad wrote called Why the Devil Was Painted Black. And it tells about this history of our ancestors, how dominant we were in Europe. Do we know anything about that? Do we know anything about our contributions to science? What part of our journey do we extol that doesn't come from the perspective of lack? Ancestral reverence is important. It's part and parcel of our spiritual journey. It's part and parcel of who and what we are. They laid the foundation for our existence today. And we must appreciate the contributions that our ancestors have made in putting us in a position of knowledge, in a position where we're able to decipher the mysteries of life, both from a physical perspective and also spiritual, because all other nations do the same thing. The pride that other nations have when they talk about their ancestors is overwhelming. But we seem to be the only ones that when you talk about ancestors, African ancestors, there's this negativity that is attached to it. But ancestral reverence, not worship, because a lot of people conflate the two. They think that ancestral reverence is ancestral worship. No, it's not. There's a distinction. You worship God. You revere your ancestors. That's the distinction between the two. And we need to make this known so that when people are, putting out the wrong narrative about African ancestors, we're able to let them know there's a difference. We don't worship our ancestors. We revere our ancestors. We worship God. But we also understand that our ancestors are very important as far as our existence and as our journey through time is concerned. Because what we know today is made possible by those that came before us. So when we talk about our ancestors, we should talk about our ancestors with pride. Not every ancestor was good. Not every ancestor was a great person. But we learn the difference between right and wrong, the difference between their contributions, their existence, whether some of them were good, whether some of them were bad, allows us a better understanding of do's and don'ts in this world, and also the contributions that those that came before us made on the positive side, so that we can enjoy what it is that we enjoy today as human beings, as spiritual people. Ndi Chien, in Igbo, Ndi Chien is what we call ancestors. That's what they are, male or female. Ndi Chien. Every other culture have their own language to describe ancestors. Ancestor is just an English term, but every culture has its own term that they use to describe their ancestors. For us, we say Ndi Chien. That's what we say in the Igbo language. In Nigeria, the Yorubas have a different name for it. The Hausas have a different name for it. Every culture have different names for everything because we all don't speak the same language. But ancestral reverence is very important in how we see ourselves, in how we understand ourselves, in what pride we have in ourselves, and understanding that the next generation is going to be looking at us from the same lens, positive or negative, and wondering, how did they get where they are now? What did they learn from their past, from their ancestors? What contributions did their ancestors make to their current contributions? And use this knowledge to be able to plot a path forward. Dibia Chido is here. What are your thoughts on this? Dibia Chido is here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. So I want
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're good.
Yeah. You are breaking. I hope I'm not breaking.
No, you're not breaking. You're pretty good. I was asking you, what are your thoughts in terms of ancestral reverence and how important ancestors are, to the future generations, the current and future generations, and why it's important that they're revered and understood, because there's this misunderstanding about African ancestors being evil and so on and so forth. So what are your thoughts?
Well, the question of evil and our ancestors being evil, it's a program designed by Europe, and which the European powers which other civilizations are keen into now to exploit Africans. The truth of the matter is that if we want to get what happened to Africans, we should just pick a copy of Achebe's Things Fall Apart and read it very well, especially that portion where Achebe wrote Okonkwo's banishment to Mbanta. To Mbanta, his son, that's his Okpara, his first son, Nwonye, was converted. And then, of course, the conversion there was that when the Europeans came, every society has got one or two things you use in penetration. And what they did was when they came in, they exploited those they felt were disgruntled against the culture. And they first converted them, took them to Europe, trained them. And then, of course, Europeanized their minds and sent them as warriors to destroy their own culture. In Igbo land, they also exploited the Osuka caste system that was practiced in some parts of Igbo land. And so they use divide and rule, they penetrate. And then, of course, the design, the agenda behind the program is to completely disorient the African mentally. Because once someone or an individual or any group of people are mentally disoriented, then they will not be able to gather the connect between their past and the future. And one grand way of doing that is to ensure that the African is dislodged from his past. And so they had to, as a deliberate program, they had to establish the churches and in the schools as well. They had to begin to teach Africans the bad aspects of their culture, because what every culture does is that every culture puts forward its best leg. And that's why you find the Bible, Jesus Christ is pure, the Quran, Muhammad is pure, as if they did nothing bad as human beings. Every culture puts forward its best 11, its best foot. But Africans were programmed to put forward their bad foot, to put forward their worst 11. And once that happens, it becomes easy to control the people, which is why we are at the crossroads today. And so it's a deliberate program, because if you want to destroy a people, destroy their mental orientation. And one way of destroying the mental orientation, a practical way of destroying the mental orientation, is to dislodge them from their ancestral past, because the ancestral past form the foundation of the people, is a foundation, and it forms the totality of their life, because that ancestral past connects them with Chineke, with God Almighty. It connects them with the cosmic. It gives them the totality of being. It gives them clarity about how to forge forward, such that if we now begin to just add, and either we add to or reinvent what our ancestors have done, then we see that our culture becomes more reformed, more accommodating, more expanding. And so our spirituality, while it remains exactly what it is, it accommodates and swallows other spirituality, and then we begin to expand. We begin to expand the way that Igbos will say, the snake that will grow big must swallow another. The swallowing now does not mean, it's not physical eating, but it means cultural adaptation. But we cannot practice cultural adaptation or cultural modernization, because we have been dislodged from our ancestral past. We have been made to denigrate our past. We have been made to believe that our ancestors are evil. And so we are running away from the reproach of our ancestors, even that which happened in ancient Egypt. When it did, I don't think that event happened. We read the Bible upside down, where it is written that the Jews, the Jewish exodus from Egypt, and they said the Egyptians, Pharaoh's army perished in the ocean or in the Red Sea. But of course, if you read Kabbalah and the Torah, that's not what it means. That particular story was meant for the Jews, not for the Egyptians. Because if you read the Egyptian record, nothing of such happened. But the crossing of water is symbolic. Water is for them to leave the land of Egypt, they cross water. For them to enter Palestine, they cross water, meaning purity. And then the injunction that the Egyptians should see today, you shall see no more. We see it in the 40 years of sojourn in the wilderness, by which all the Jews, including Moses himself, who had Jewish mentality, perished in the wilderness. People who are just 12 years down, like Joshua and Caleb, and new generation were born in the wilderness, who did not know Egypt. So that when Israel was founded, it was founded on a new chapter. Now, but today, we are made to believe that even Egypt, the pioneered, that is African, is the pioneered world civilization, colonized parts of India, colonized parts of Europe. We have been made that we are suffering from the reproach of Egypt. And if we are suffering from the reproach of Egypt, we are also being made to believe that we are suffering from the curse of our ancestors. And so all these are deliberate programs. And the churches and the schools, the mosques in Africa are meant to propagate this. The university, the schools in Africa from kindergarten to university can never develop Africa, because the African scholar has been made and programmed to keep teaching European style of scholarship, been made to dissuade the African from whatever is African. The church is programmed that way, the mosque is programmed that way, and so that is why we have to continue what we are doing and Chiism, and I'll say top up to Keiko Onyoha and those who pioneered this dream that we are in today sustaining. That's the only way we can fight it, and I hope the best for us. That's my little take for now.
Oh, man. That is so beautiful. You just kind of like summarized everything. Before I say a couple more words right quick, let me welcome Dr. Dibia Simona.
Hello.
Doctor, how you doing? Welcome to the
show.
As usual.
Chineke, for you and all of the knowledge that you're bringing, you and even Your Excellency, she can't be here today, but I thank you for bringing forth. You guys are bringing forth power and so much wisdom, so I thank you so much for being here, and I honor you, and I take a knee like the African way, if I could, there to you. So
thank you so much.
Just thank you for the knowledge. I'm so passionate about this because here in America, they have totally stripped us away from our ancestors. The only thing that we had left, they're telling our people now that is evil, that is something that we should not be doing, is honoring our ancestors, is connecting with our ancestors. And how are we supposed to move on? I think the condition we are in right now is because we're disconnected from our ancestors. And so this is such an important topic. And we have to get out of that mindset and understand and open our eyes to what is going on, how we're being stripped of everything we have, how we're being spoon-fed in our communities, where we have nothing here. We don't have our own grocery stores. We cannot sustain ourselves as a people in many parts of the world as African people, and even in Africa. And so I say we must honor our ancestors. That is part of the problem. Yes. Even if you look at Christianity and it says in the Bible, honor your father and mother. Well, our father and mother are our ancestors for one. Where did our father and mother come from? So we must, give honor and respect to our ancestors. We have to understand that this is not evil. What is evil is that they took our culture away from us. What is evil is that I grew up and not knew the God of my ancestors, What is evil, when I talk to some of the people that I know because of ignorance, and I understand the ignorance that they have, when I had a conversation with one of my friends, and I said I watched a traditional African spiritual ceremony, and it looked similar to some things that go on in that holiness church. And they said, "Oh, you're letting the devil in. You're letting the devil in." I said, "Well, this was what my ancestors did. And yours. So you're telling me that you have low self-esteem for yourself because the ancestors that came here on that boat that was forced to come here, they were worshiping God as we know it, Chineke, as we know it in that way, and it has transcended down. You think you're in the church doing Christianity the way that you're doing Christianity when it's transcended. Some of those ways have transcended. So this is so important. I'm so passionate about the ancestors and letting people know you must honor your ancestors. You must do it. It is not a choice. We must do it so we can get out of the state that we're in, so that we can be liberated both in our minds and here and wherever we are in the world, and in Africa and the diaspora.
Oh, absolutely. You're absolutely right. I mean, both of you are making very salient points. Dr. Dibe Chidozie had talked about how this idea of ancestral reverence was exercised out of our psyche, right? Turning us into something that we are not. And that's the first strategy of inflicting self-hatred, is to deny your ancestors, your contributions to civilized behavior. Even though we understand that ancestral veneration and respect is crucial because they are elders that walked the path that the living people are walking today. The idea of Chineke, the idea of God, the idea that a creator exists is made possible because of those that came before us. Our knowledge of God is because of our ancestors. Our worship of Chineke is because of our ancestors. I think the tragedy of this whole thing is, and I think, I talk about this all the time, and Akachi, mentioned it too, is the idea that we revere other people's ancestors.
Yes.
You open up the Bible and you read about the Moses and all that stuff, and you read all the characters in the Bible. These are all ancestors that belong to the Abrahamic clique. Mm-hmm. Nothing to do with you, right? You go to the Hindu religion and you open up their holy book, and it's all about those that came before them that contributed to this spiritual knowledge. You go to Buddhism, they talk about the famous Buddhas. You go to Islam, they talk about the famous imams and teachers in Islam. They quote those in the mosques. They talk about it. You go to Christianism, they talk about ancestors that are real and unreal. You go to Ireland and they talk about St. Patrick and all of that stuff. Yes. They talk about their spiritual heroes. All of them do. As a matter of fact, you cannot disassociate the worship of Chineke, the worship of God, from ancestral reverence. They go hand in hand. Yes. They go hand in hand because any knowledge about God that you profess out of your mouth, any understanding of what God is that you have, is made possible because of those that came before you. We never thought about our ancestors as being evil until the European came to our shores with the Arab came to our shores with the Bible and the Quran. And when they came, as Dr. Dibe Chidozie, talked about earlier, they got those people that were disgruntled, which usually is, a minuscule percentage of the population that you could manipulate, right? And they do that. And they manipulated those people. They gave them, the powers of influence, made possible by the gun. See, it's not possible for you to come preaching the Bible to Africa without some kind of military power behind you. You beat the hatred of our ancestors into the African. You murdered, you castrated, you raped, you did all manners of evil to get rid of that resistance to your influence. And you did it. And the funny thing is that the descendants of those people that did it to you look upon those ancestors that did it to you as the most important thing in their history. And they quote them and they teach them in school and they talk about them. But you come to the African community, particularly in the motherland, it is practically non-existent. I went to school, I went to primary school in Africa. I went to high school in Africa before I came here to the United States. And I could tell you that beyond people like Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, Jomo Kenyatta, who was currently president of Kenya at the time that I was growing up, practically every African that we knew about, except those Africans that embraced foreign religion of Islam or Christianism. Because nobody talked about Buddhists and Shinto and all that when I was coming up. We had no idea what those things were at all. It's just not taught anywhere in school that I know about. But we extol the history and the ancestors of those people that enslaved and colonized us. Their ancestors became our heroes. We never talked about any ancestors outside the people that we consider to be ancestors now that were alive at the time that I was coming up. Anybody that you talked about beyond that, except for maybe a character like King Jaja of Opobo, which wasn't talked about much in school anyway. We talked about African ancestors that actually propagated the same spirituality or religious philosophies that justified the enslavement of the African. An example would be people like Mansa Musa. Yeah, he's talked about the richest man in the world all time, spread gold from Mecca, or from Timbuktu or Ghanaian Empire, Mali Empire, all the way to Mecca when he had a pilgrimage over there. But the truth of the matter is he also helped to consolidate Islam and choked off most of the knowledge that people in his realm had about their ancestors that had nothing to do with Islam. Those that came before were not acknowledged at all. Then you talk about people like Sekou Touré, Usman Dan Fodio, Ibn Battuta. These were all the people that helped to spread Islam throughout sub-Saharan Africa. So the educational system in Nigeria extolled those ancestors because the ruling class were Muslim. So they extolled their Muslim heroes, but nobody ever talked about an indigenous African hero. None of them were ever talked about in school. So we had no idea about the contributions that our ancestors made to civilized behavior. But I tell you this, before the European came, we used to cure diseases. We cured diseases. We did brain surgery. It still goes on in some villages in Africa today without European anesthetics. You see a man or woman sitting down with their cranium open and somebody's going in there and doing some stuff. In the village in Africa, it goes on right now. This is medical knowledge that was passed on to us by our ancestors. Then you talk about math. You talk about the Lobamba bones, the Ishaka bones. The first calculation of distance happened in Central Africa over 35,000 years ago. Who talked about that? Those were our ancestors that developed this calculation system. You can talk about every area of life where our ancestors made contributions to it. Medicine, math, architecture. I mean, the houses that you found in the villages before the European came, somebody started building that stuff. The edifices, the Nsude pyramids that you see, it was somebody that started that stuff and passed it on from generation to generation to generation. Any knowledge that you have about medicine, somebody passed it on. All processes within the community, the festivals, all that stuff, somebody passed it on. In Africa, Chineke was our ancestors' recess excuse for everything they did. Peeping into the countenance of God, always seeking to please Chineke, always seeking knowledge. A lot of times through trial and error. I love okra soup. I do. And I cook a mean okra soup. I'm telling you right now, Dr. Simona, that okra soup is the bomb. One taste of that okra soup, you're hooked. That's it. It's over for you. You don't want to eat anything else. At least once a week, you'll be craving it. That's how good I am fixing okra soup. But the ingredients in that soup, it took trial and error for somebody to put that stuff together for me to know how to cook it now and go, oh my God. The food items that we eat took somebody that came before us to taste it. Some of them died. And by losing their lives, by experimenting on these different leaves and food that we eat today, they prepared the way for us to know that this is good for you. This is not good for you. This will make you feel good. This will kill you. Everything that we know as a people today, as individuals today, as living people that walk this earth was made possible by those that came before us.
Yes.
So the idea that our ancestors are evil, as Dr. Chidozie, eloquently, talked about in the beginning of his presentation, is the fact that we were resocialized through, for the most part, either voluntary or for the most part, forced coercion, leading a lot of people to say, well, our ancestors sold us into slavery. If our ancestors were strong enough, they wouldn't have allowed, us to be colonized and us to be enslaved. But our ancestors were up against the gun, ammunition, boom, 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 boom. Without the musket, Africans would have been enslaved or colonized. Did we fight them? Did our ancestors fight? Yes, they fought to the death. We just didn't lay down and get run over. We were raped, beaten, castrated. In Belgium, people were, amputated for various reasons. The Queen of Udongo fought the Portuguese in the 16th century. She went down fighting. We have a whole lot of heroes like that we should be talking about. Those people that created things and those people that fought the Arab and the European, trying to keep us from being enslaved and colonized. We had heroes like that. Who talks about, they made a movie about, the Bahamian female army. These are ancestors. These are our forebears. How many of us knew about that story until an American woman made a movie about it? We didn't know anything about Shaka, the king of Zulu, till the European made a movie, a TV series, Shaka Zulu. That we began to kind of understand some of the people that came before us. We had a society that functioned perfectly, that took care of our needs in sub-Saharan Africa before the European or the Arab came to our shores with the Bible and resocialized us into thinking that our ancestors are the reason why we're in the position that we're in today. No, they are not. We're in the position that we're in today because somebody came through the Sahara Desert and through Europe with their religion and spirituality and forcefully enslaved us, colonized us, took away by force what is ours and supplanted it with theirs, built schools, taught us their history, made us have reverence for their ancestors, relegated all our ancestors as evil people that existed in the past, people that were unable to protect us. If your ancestors were so good and so strong, we will not be able to have how do you say, our feet, our legs or our feet on your neck. You discount the spirituality of Africans and how we relate it to other people. Biri can biri, live and let live. We have a different type of spiritual identity and belief system that put us in a position where we always welcome people.
Yes.
We always saw people as good. Then, of course, they turn around to prove us wrong. But part of what happened to us was, number one, the forcefulness of the invader, of the colonizer. And then number two, the idea that our spirituality was more about individual relationship with your fellow human being without rumpling social harmony. They saw that as weakness, but we saw it as spiritual strength, because in our history, we never had a reason to go and invade somebody else and annex them. That's not what we were all about. We were totally different in how we saw the world. The way they saw the world was through conquest. Whether you're a Viking, same thing. You're Roman, same thing. The Caesars and the Norse, all that stuff. They all shared the same outlook on life, which is to conquer, to invade. The Chinese saw the same thing. The Khans did the same thing. The shoguns in Japan did the same thing. In India, most of these cultures, in all these different religions, Shintoism, Buddhism, Sikhism, and all that, their way of life was invading, annexing, taking over. Some built institutions and got rid of the institutions, the primordial institutions that existed. Some of them didn't care. They just wanted to come in there for raw material and women, like Genghis Khan did. Genghis Khan conquered from Mongolia to Gaul and never built any structures along the way. He was a plunderer. An evil one, I might add. But anyway, I just felt, and we felt in Chiism, that talking about, explaining the importance of African ancestors and the role that they play, or they played in our existence and providing us with the knowledge that we have today, is very crucial. And it is important that we begin to appreciate those that came before us, because without them, there is nothing about us today that actually would have existed. There's no knowledge that would have been gained if it wasn't for our ancestors. At 11 o'clock, we're going to play a video, and maybe we should go ahead and try to play that right now. So let's try to play this video. It's a commercial by my son, Emeka. So we're going to play that right now.
Undewo. Long life to y'all. Hey, how y'all doing, man? You know what I'm saying? I'm just walking out here in nature, and I just felt like I had to say thank you all for showing us the support. Because I know there's been technical problems and been a lot of things going on in the world, but y'all stay and tune in every Sunday. And I much appreciate y'all for all the support. Over 11,000. I said 11,000. 111 subs on YouTube. So much love. Appreciate y'all. And I know there's over like thousands over in Facebook. But make sure to tune into our YouTube every Sunday. You know what I'm saying? Turn on the post notifications. Like, comment, subscribe. Gosh. Like, comment, subscribe, and share. It will be much appreciated. And y'all have a wonderful day and have a blessed day. God bless you.
Okay, Messiah. Again, it's a reminder to subscribe to Chiism Live. We're out here every Sunday from 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock. with the help of the DBS, OK Dibia, of course, herself, Dibia Chidozie and Dibia Monet, and yours truly, trying to bring you knowledge and bless you every Sunday. So subscribe to Cheerism Live and help our channel grow. And the more we grow, the more influential we are out here to people of African ancestry. You know, it is our responsibility, you know, as Africans, to educate one another in the positivity or the positives of being African and our contribution to civilized behavior. We need to understand what happened to us, why we are at the crossroads today, why we think the way we do, what are the influences responsible for what is happening to us in every African community, in the motherland, in diaspora. We all go through the same challenges, no matter where you come from. If you're Black, you're African, period. Jamaican, Blacks in America, in Europe, in South America, it doesn't matter where you come from. We share the same history. We're just removed from one another, but we share the same history. There's nobody outside of the Black race that will see an African, anybody of African ancestry, and start to wonder. I wonder if he's Nigerian. I wonder if he's Jamaican. I wonder if he's from Senegal. I wonder if he's Yoruba or Hausa. They see us the same as Black people, as people they consider to be inferior. By saying that, there's a video that came to my attention. It's a very, very short video, but it's a video about Africans coming to China. I mean, Chinese people coming to Africa and doing some really despicable things. So we're going to play the video, and then after the video is over with, let's talk about it.
This is like a whole industry popping up in China where they have little African children say Chinese phrases, and they're like dressed in their village garb or whatever, and they record them saying Chinese phrases as like greetings for each other, but the phrases are like degrading things, like
you're a monster.
Yeah, I'm a monster. I have low IQ.
我是黑鬼，是沙迪。
And then these videos get sold and passed around in China, and they were interviewing the villagers and the little kids that he uses, because he pays them like $50 a week to make these videos, and they make them all day long. They were saying that like if they don't cooperate, he beats them, things like that. Crazy stuff.
He did an interview with the other Chinese guy. He's like, oh yeah, you gotta treat them like monsters.
Yeah.
不要可怜他们，这是最主要。你把这句话放在心里，对待黑人，行了。
I mean, that just about makes you want to throw up. But this is the reality of how we are perceived. This is the reality of how folks just take advantage of Africans, take advantage of our children. I think the tragic thing about this stuff is that it's not the fact that the Chinese people are doing it. You know, I look at it differently. I don't think about what somebody's doing to us. I just don't think about that. You know, it's like having malaria. And then you're asking somebody, is your problem the fever, the vomiting, the shivering? No, it's a symptom, right, of a larger problem, which is malaria. But what causes the malaria? It is the mosquito that puts the parasite into you. Then you develop these symptoms called malaria collectively that will end up killing you if you're not treated. I look at it this way. If we as a people have no pride in who we are and don't care about our children and the next generation and don't make any plans or build infrastructure or create an educational environment that uplifts our children, you know, giving them, you know, the knowledge to be able to build a better future for themselves. If you don't have a way of protecting your children from this kind of stuff, I can't blame the Chinese. I cannot. I would say to my sister in my language, Dr. Chido say, you know what I'm talking about.
Sure.
If you let yourself and agree to be insulted, you will be insulted.
Sure.
It's up to you. It is the environment that we have created as people of African ancestry by this level of self-hatred that has allowed the Chinese to come to Africa and make videos like that and use our self-hatred and ignorance against us and sell these videos in China, creating a totally different narrative of the black man and woman, of the black child, where you get insulted all over the world. Who are you to get mad at the Chinese for doing that? Yes, it's disgusting, but they only do it because you allowed it. The Chinese can't go to Europe and make videos of European kids and calling them monkeys and monsters. They can't go to China and do it. I mean, Japan and do that. They can't go to Korea. They can't even go to Mexico and do it. And Mexico is no more advanced than Africa because they're all caught up in the same Catholic thing. They forget that they're Mayans, they're Aztecs, they're Incas, that they had great civilizations. They built their own pyramids. They had one of the most accurate calendaring system in the world, the Mayan calendar. They forgot all about their contribution. It is a European and the researchers from the United States and Europe that is actually creating the narrative for the Mexican, where he may gain some level of appreciation for his culture, his ancestors, and his history. But somehow the Chinese, based on our leadership, has the temerity to come to Africa, make such videos, go back and make money in China by having our own children chanting, talking about I'm a monster in Chinese, thinking that they are learning Chinese. They're just kids getting paid $1 a week. $1 a week to bastardize themselves without knowing what the heck they're saying. They're learning Chinese language, but the Chinese are only teaching them what they want them to know. And here we are. Even Americans, the guy on the video is a white guy who is so disgusted by what's going on. Anybody who sees that video should be disgusted. But am I mad at the Chinese? Yeah, I have my reservation about what they did by doing what they're doing. But for me, it really is about us. We're the ones that created an environment where people come in and insult us.
Yes.
It's on us. It's not about the Chinese. You can't ask the Chinese to respect you if you're not respecting yourself. You don't respect your religion. You don't respect your culture. You have no leadership. Your economy is in the tank. There's no social safety net in Africa. You have no appreciation of your culture, your religion. There's nothing about you that you extol to the world where the world will look at you and go, wow, these Africans did this. This is really great. No, you go to church on Sunday, your God is not black, it's white, Jewish, or whatever. Everything you do is extolling somebody else. The garb that you wear, you go to court, you got your little white, what do you call it, a wig on your head, and you're wearing this stuff looking like a freaking freak out there, talking about I'm in court. You can't go to court dressed the way Dr. Chidozie is dressed right now, or the way I'm dressed right now. I walk into court as a lawyer. Part of the decorum of being a member of the judiciary or being a lawyer, being in the law system, is for you to dress like a British guy. That's the only way you're validated as a lawyer, when you walk into court and you're dressed like this thing from another land. But if you dress in your own African outfit, you are admonished and told to get out of court. Go and dress appropriately. Go and dress like the master servant before you come in here. So whatever you see that is happening to the African in terms of disrespect, we are totally responsible for it. In today's world, I'm never going to discount colonization. I'm never going to discount slavery and what it did to the African. I'm not going to discount all these evils that were perpetrated on us. But this is the information age. This is today. We should be responsible enough for our children. This lack of understanding that the children are the future. If you don't prepare the world for them to compete, their future is bleak. You left them with nothing. You left them with no industries. We can build bridges, but we can't build hospitals. Children are dying in droves every day because of the inability of African leadership to provide for the next generation. The future belongs to them. It doesn't belong to me. Future don't belong to my ancestors. According to Barack Obama, we are borrowing today from our children. These are the people that we need to take care of so that they can revere us as ancestors years from now. If we don't create a place for them, if we don't create an environment where they're going to flourish, it is just a matter of time before Africa disappears, before your backbone disappears, before you have no more homeland to go to. It's going to be owned by China and whoever else is able to come in there and jack your mind up and continue to impress upon you that everything about you, about your ancestors, about you as an African is terrible, is evil, is uncivilized. My daddy describes civilization in his book. He says, the ability for you as a person to defend the right of your fellow human being to exist, that's civilized behavior. There's nobody defending our lives as Africans to exist. And as far as I'm concerned, we are surrounded by uncivilized people because they don't appreciate diversity. They don't understand that all roses are not red. They don't understand that all insects are not bees. All cats are not lions. There are all kinds of cats. Tigers, leopards, ocelot, cheetah, they're all cats. Different kinds of trees, but they're all trees. Different kinds of grass, but it's grass. Different kinds of bodies of water, oceans, rivers, lakes, pools, but they're all water. Different kinds of clouds, stratus, cumulus, all that stuff. There is nothing that is uniform in this world. We must have an understanding of that. We must appreciate ourselves. Whatever it is that the African is, as a human being, is divine. We can't sit around here and talk about, God is perfect, God created everything perfect, then turn around and say that one of God's creation is inferior. Everything serves a purpose. If one of God's creation is inferior to another one based on their importance in the evolution of life, then God made a mistake. And you can no longer talk about the fact that Chineke is perfect. That argument becomes null and void. So what you see in that video is terrible, but at the same time, the Chinese cannot be blamed for that. They are just taking advantage of our ignorance and our inability to protect our children. What do you think, Dr. Simona?
I think that this, like I said,
before I respond.
No, I asked Dr. Simona. We'll get to you, Dr. Chidozie, in a second. Dr. Simona has the floor now.
I think that, for one, we have to understand that the conditioning from the Chinese this has been a long time coming. And it started with our identity. They know that's why we have beauty supply stores all around the world where African people are. They're very profitable. They won't even allow us to be a part of the business. And so one thing they know is that we have issues with our identity. We have, as a collective, low self-esteem. And with having low self-esteem, it's easy for a person to come in, take your children, and do whatever they want to because you're already looking at that person as superior to you. And so when you look at that person, they come into your community, because I don't know of too many communities that are allowing foreigners to come in and start teaching their children, have access to their children for one, and start teaching them foreign things without it being an issue. We're the only ones that allow that. I was just talking about that with the city of Detroit. Now, there's so many people, like I said, we're eating out of the hands of, that are not our own hands. that are profiting, setting up shop, nonprofits and things like that, getting government funds, getting government money on the expense of the suffering of our people. And what they do is, and what I figured out, this is one thing that I figured out, what they do is they'll have us volunteer for work that they're getting paid for, unbeknownst to us, because we're compassionate about our community, while they're sitting and collecting the funds and giving it to their people. And so we are the only ones that do that. I mean, to this extent. So it's not just in Africa, it's all over the world, because we feel that when a foreigner comes in that is not African, they have a superiority, that what they do is right, and not understanding that they're still there for our demise. We have not gotten any justice for us or our ancestors. And when there's no justice that has been done for all of the atrocities that us and our ancestors have gone through in Africa and the diaspora, there's no respect. The world does not respect us. We have not even gotten reparations here in America. They have literally made furniture out of the skins of our ancestors. We have not even gotten reparations. They're still killing Black women in the hospitals.
Yeah.
And the babies. So we are not respected at all. And so that is a reflection of that. They're doing that in Africa. And I don't know if those children were in poverty or what is their economic status. But that is something that they do too, take advantage of. We have to understand, no matter what kind of state we're in financially, we cannot just sell out ourselves and sell out our children. So the thing is, why would you, the first question should be, why do they want my children to come here and do these videos on a weekly, paying my children to say whatever in Chinese? I don't even understand what they're saying. Why would they be doing that? We have to start questioning those things. But you're not thinking about that because you think, everything outside of African is white, is better, is superior. Yeah. And so we have to get out of that mindset. So you're sitting there, the mothers, they're probably wearing that Chinese hair. They're probably wearing all of that Chinese stuff in those beauty supply stores, the skin lightening cream and everything. And then when they actually come here, they know it's from China. Oh, wow, they're the savior. They're great. They're, or whatever. The Chinese know they already have us conquered. They've already conquered us mentally by all of the years of us using products and altering our natural appearances. They already know they are conquered. If I can conquer, and we have something that they want, the resources. So if I can conquer these children, if I can condition these children starting at an early age to even hate themselves even more, then I will be able to have access to the resources. I will lock it down to have access to these resources. The same with Detroit. The same thing. We can't even come together. A person comes in there out of our race. I have a person that when I was working a job, and someone told me there was an Arabic guy, and he said that he was gonna flip this lady's money. She was Black. He's gonna flip her money. She give him $10,000 in 3 weeks. He's gonna give her triple the money back. Now, I was speaking to her friend because her friend was telling me the story, and her friend, have been in business and things like that. She said, now I'm her friend. Now, if I would have asked her to give me that $10,000, I'll invest it for you, she would have never gave it to me. But because he was Arabic, she gave him her money. And it was an inheritance. It was some of the only money she had. And guess what? He never gave her anything. She lost the money. but she trusted him because he wasn't Black. And this goes on in our community over and over again. And this is why we're so vulnerable. Be careful. We have to be careful what we're exposing ourselves to and what we're exposing our children to when it comes to other cultures, all of these different things. We have to protect ourselves because there's a lot of people. The enslavement, the war is not over. People are warring against us. We don't even understand. We're not even fighting back because we don't understand the systematic structures that have been put in place against us for our demise all around the world. We must start to pay attention. We're not paying attention. Over here, another thing, I was speaking to someone and they were saying it was kind of an impoverished area in Detroit. So they set up shop to give kids these shots. I guess it was experimental, whatever was in that shot was experimental. They gave the parents, I believe it was like $20 to get your kids this shot. Not even knowing what the shot is. But it's our communities, we never learn because that's happened before in our communities. But you will get your child a shot because you want that $20 to do what with?
True.
You don't even know what this is.
Yeah.
It's us that they target because they know they can do it. We're the only community that will allow them to do that.
Absolutely.
Let's not blame them. They do it because we allow it.
Absolutely. And that's the lesson here. You said the mouthful. I mean, absolutely on the money. This trusting everything outside our own community, right, is part of the legacy of colonization and slavery, and where they work on your mind, where you go from Kunta Kinte to Toby.
Yes.
They beat it out of you, they castrate you, they lynch it out of you, they do all kinds of stuff to create this self-hatred, and you trust in them to be the ones that are, they become the vessel for God's blessing towards you as a Black person, and then also creates this distrust among us where we don't trust each other. We hate each other. And then some of us, we assimilate that thought process and actually now try to, to work against our own community in all areas of life. I mean, you see that in Nigeria, Peter Obi won the election, and yet we somehow got this criminal about to take the oath of office tomorrow. Everybody knows he's a criminal. But one way or another, without him ever thinking of the next generation, ever thinking about what effect his example is going to have on the general population and future leaders of this country. When you start to normalize criminality, normalize lack of caring for the future of the country, you got a problem. That's why I said it is really us now, as opposed to them. Divya Chido's here. What say you?
Yeah, well said. Divya Monet, my cap did for Oppo. I doff my cap for you. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Yes. So and with the daughters, aunties, and mothers like you, there's hope.
Yes, there is.
Yesterday, our women held a program. I was not able to join, but I was with you in spirit. I say, more power to your elbows. My to take here on this matter of that particular video by the Chinese is that the Chinese are really telling us what we are. If you denigrate your ancestors, then you are a monster.
Yep.
You are stupid.
It's us.
And they are not the first to do so. They are not the first to do so. Because I do remember as a little child, I was in primary 3 then. I was in primary 3, and I was coming back from school, and I saw some laborers Then we're living in a GRA, and then we saw some laborers, and they were shouting, "Hey, Shobe, hey, hey, Shobe, hey, hey, Shobe,
Yeah, I
hey."
remember that.
And we have been taught in primary school that "hey, Shobe" means apes obey, hey, apes obey, hey. And it was a way they were chanting that happily and carrying the load, and they were loading the van. And the person in charge of the van was a Lebanese. And then he was there standing like a king. And I stood and looked at that intensely. And I said to myself, I am going to address this problem in future. That's what I said to myself, that I was going to address that problem in future. Well, I think that is why that's why I'm in this team, that we are addressing such issue. So, Divya Monet, you really hit the hammer on the center of the head of the nail. So now the question here is that if I can recall, that was last month, I had some Indian visitors. They are Hare Krishna people. Usually, when I teach the course Philosophy of Mind, I invite people of different spirituality to come and teach their own conception of mind, because I don't want to teach Philosophy of Mind from a textbook perspective, whereby we teach all the behaviorisms, all the isms, and then mind-body problem and all that, dualist theory of mind, materialist monist theory of mind, and all of that. These are textbooks. So when I tell the students that these are perspectives derived and developed by individuals to explain how they understand the mind and how the mind functions, they don't get it. So the thing there is to engage them in seminar. So I invited the Hare Krishna people. They talked about their own. I think there are some Chinese people I invited and talked about their own. Then I invited our own Jibia. I invited actually one Babalawo and one Jibia to talk about mind. And so they saw that at the end of the day that mind is our power, our ability, our capacity to understand ourselves, our environment, and direct it, take charge of it, take control of it. And in that way too, they began to see, they also saw that each people, each civilization have their own concept of mind, and they conceive the mind from their own perspective. So they were more elated when they saw that the Africans also understood what mind is. Our ancestors understood it, and that Alpha divination, it's all about mind taking charge of the environment, past, present, and future, particularly the future. Now, when we finished the lecture, and the Indians were in my office, and one of the high chief priests that came from India, we got talking, and at the end of the day, we were making up a summary of what we have discussed. So I was asked my own to make my own summary, and I said imagination was key, because with imagination we can reinvent and renew our past, keep reinventing and making our past to be fresh. Well, when the Indian Grandmaster was asked, he said, practice. And they asked him why. He said, well, that I am the first African he has met, African lecturer in the university he has met that knows beyond theory. With all African scholars he has been meeting, they teach textbook, and they are not into their culture. So they have nothing new to teach except what's in the book. But discussing with me, he saw the African perspective, and I told him that I'm just a beginner. And then, of course, I brought the Okunzu. I welcomed him the way an Igbo person would welcome an august visitor in his office or in his home. And the African teams were there. We brought the cola. We did the libation. And when we finished, he said, that's the thing that caught his interest. That as a professor, I could I could not only speak my language, I'm into my spirituality. I practice it, I dig from it, and I teach it. I am not ashamed of it. And so that is what he loves most. That's what he feels that Africa should be doing, not preaching other people's way of life. So when the Chinese come to us and gather our kids and begin to teach our kids to say in Chinese that we are monsters, we are devils, but that's what we are. Because when we run away from our ancestors, our spirituality, we become monsters of our culture, demons of our culture, demonizing our culture, monsterizing our culture, killing our culture, deliberately or inadvertently. We do so. So as we destroy our culture with our own hands, we are monsters. Yes. Except we begin to do otherwise. So the Chinese are just telling us what Trump and Putin told us. Trump told us that you are a shithole. Of course, Africans didn't like it, but I like someone who tells me the truth. Not someone who tells me, oh, you are good, you are good. No, someone who tells me what I am. So you are a shithole. Go back to your country and fix it. And Putin says, Africa is all about grave. And we think the white man is wiser than us, so we steal all the money and go and put them in Europe. We are not even honest thieves. You know, like Osadebe sang in the song, say, okay, there is was any reachedo. Even the rat does not steal the very particular meat or fish the rat has stolen. It does not steal it from itself. But we steal from ourselves and go and put it abroad. And then we say, the dog does not eat the bone hung on its neck, but we eat the bone hung on our neck. So how do we want the world to see us? The Chinese are just telling us the simple truth. When you don't promote your culture, when you don't live your culture, when you don't practice your spirituality, you do not radiate goodness.
Yeah. I mean, you just...
That's my take.
I love your take. Both your takes are just spot on, Dr. Simona. On top of it, so are you, Dibia Chidize. Listen, to the people listening to us right here. Dr. Chidize just alluded to it. We're our own worst enemy. Yes. Don't worry about the context. All right? Let's not talk about the reason why we're the way we are today. Yeah, we've talked about that ad nauseum, by the way. Take that out of the equation. We know some of us know how we got here. Some of us don't know how we got here. Some of us just think that's the way it is, right? And some of us think that's the way it is because we've never been in an environment that actually shared the information that we needed to be able to make informed decision, And then there's this laissez-faire in Africa because of our lack of attention. Where in my village we say, laissez-faire, let people just do what the heck they want to do. There's no leadership. There's no plan for anything. There's no consensus in the way things are done. So we say, forget about how we got here for a second. We talk about that all the time. Some of us are fortunate enough to be in an environment where this information is disseminated. So at least we have an understanding. Then when you have an understanding, then perhaps you could be able to chart your way forward, right? You could be able to do things that maybe allow you to negotiate life without falling into certain pitfalls and all that. But Dr. Chidozie alluded to it. We are monsters. You look in the mirror sometimes. Maybe not those people that understand what we need to do, because I can't call those people monsters. But the majority of us, we're monsters. We're our own worst enemy. We're architects of our own downfall today. Yes, I said it. You said it, Dr. Simona, Dr. Chidozie said it. This lack of trust. We would do business with the outsider, but we can't do business with ourselves because we don't love ourselves or trust ourselves enough to accept each other as an indispensable part of our existence. We are our own worst enemy. Nobody put a gun to anybody's head. They didn't put a gun to the heads of those parents, of those children, to put on African outfit and say those things. Those children did it because their parents are poor. Yes. And the parents are poor and have no institutional help because of the leadership. So maybe I should rephrase that, even though I know the rest of us are really whacked out in the mind. But the leadership that we produce because of this idiocy in our brains, this lack of appreciation, like Dr. Chidozie talked about, and you mentioned it, Dr. Simona. We hate ourselves. We don't appreciate anything African. Everything foreign is superior to us. We've been conditioned to believe that. We don't have any institutions that extols anything African. We don't have not one institution worldwide dedicated to Black people the world over. We should at least have one institution that does everything African. People can come from all over the world. My father was trying to build that in Ijimankporo called the Cheers Academy, the Guardian Academy. In Umboro, they got the land. The government gave that land. It's still there. Still trying to build this academy. This academy is a place where you could come in and learn everything from African medicine to history to everything that we've contributed to civil life behavior. And I'm just not talking about a place where you just come and learn about Mburu, my village, culture, and things that we did. Yoruba culture is in there. Bantu culture is in there. Zulu culture can be found in there. Every major African culture and religion can be found in this academy. And then not only that, a section of the academy is also dedicated to world cultures, where natural theology becomes the order of the day. And then people can learn everything they want to know about science, math, all that stuff. We have the blueprint. We've written it. We've done everything. We put all this stuff together. Name one thing you think that African people need today in the world for us to prosper and be respected. We've done it in Chasm. Right now, we are at the cusp of producing the first spiritual book. It's over 5/4. We're trying to get this thing as big as we have. Right now, it's about 600-700 pages. It's coming out. Just like you pick up the Bible, you will pick up the Nkomi. Just like you pick up the Quran, you will pick up the Nkomi. You need to have a book that is consistent, that addresses every African spiritual culture and simplifies it. So it's not important if you're Yoruba, if you're from Ghana, if you're from Senegal, if you're from Rwanda, if you're from South Africa, it doesn't matter. When you pick up the Nkomi, you see your spiritual culture in it because it deals with everyday human spiritual endeavor and a blueprint on how to live a spiritual life, not only the African way, but as a human being. I mean, thou shalt not kill is not a Christian thing, is it? No. Every culture observes that thou shalt not lie. It's not a biblical, a script. Everybody has it. So every religion in the world, every African religion, in terms of how we see God, how we see Chineke, we have something in common, and you find it in this book that takes into consideration African spiritual culture. It does not exist anywhere in the world. We are going to be the first people to put it out there. And then when you put it out there, instead of the African understanding why you put something like that out there to be able to address this void that we have in the spiritual undertaking called life, we will start arguing. Well, Ghanaian people are not going to agree with that. Oh, people from South Africa are not going to agree with that. The Yorubas will not agree with that. The Hausas will not agree. The Igbos will not agree. And then you forget the reason why it's being done in the first place. Then some people get upset. Well, if they are not the ones getting credit for this endeavor, they don't want to be part of it. They lose the bigger picture. They forget why it's being done in the first place. This is what every African should be concerned about, no matter where you are in the world. African American, Jamaican, Haitian, Nigerian, South African, it doesn't matter. We should be talking about what is it that we need to make common among ourselves, including language. There are 4 important ways to bring the people together, and I'm going to talk about 3 of them briefly. Language. You must have a common language. You must have a common language that a community understands so that they could communicate and feel equal in this communication. For Africans, I don't care if it's Swahili, start teaching it. When you develop institutions in our African communities, particularly the kind of institutions that I'm talking about, you teach a specific African language so that every African speaks it, whether you're Jamaican, whether you're African American, whether you're Igbo, whether you're Hausa, speak this particular language. Understand why you're doing it. Don't get angry and say, well, why did they choose Swahili and they didn't choose Yoruba? It's not important. We all speak in English. When you were learning English in school, were you arguing about the fact they were teaching you English? You needed to learn English so you could communicate with them. Not only for you to communicate with your oppressor, but you could communicate with your fellow Nigerians. There are 400 different tribes in Nigeria. English became your lingua franca. Why is it that you could speak a French in African countries and you're not having a problem with it? You don't speak your traditional language. You go to Senegal, they speak French. You go to a bunch of African countries that speak French and Portuguese. French and Portuguese is not their language. They don't even speak their traditional languages. They don't teach that in school. There are no books anywhere in the world written in every African language on any subject matter, not in, maybe in literature. But there's no book in math in any African language. There's no book in geography. If you go to France, their science books are in French. Every book you read in France, in any human endeavor in education, is in French. Same thing in Germany. Same thing in Japan. Same thing in China. Every country in Europe writes books in their own indigenous language, whether you're from Yugoslavia, whether you're from Holland, it doesn't matter. But Africa is the only place, and South America, where everything about them is in the same language that justified and enslaved and colonized them in the first place. We don't have any institution dedicated to African people. So it is difficult for you to bring the African to a point where they appreciate themselves and respect themselves enough where these influences and these insults that is just pervasive, as Dr. Chidozie talked about. We have to do it, people. It's not important to have arguments about, well, you know, why did we choose this tribe and we didn't choose that tribe? What difference does it make? You got so many tribes. It's time to come together and figure out a way to unite us as people of African ancestry so that we could have common goals, so that we could produce the right kind of leadership. Because we are truly monsters. Maybe somebody made us monsters, but we are monsters because we don't care about the children. 2 things in life: ancestral reverence and the children. They go hand in hand. An appreciation of your ancestor is an appreciation of yourself. It is putting on the armor that you need so that imperialism does not affect you. The best defense against imperialism is religion and culture. If you lose that, you'll be on video like those kids. And right now, there's a whole lot of videos that are not like the Chinese making the videos of African children. But right now, we're in video for a lot of crap. Our women are in video with their crazy long nails and eyelashes that are this long, and they're bleaching of their skin and doing everything to themselves that makes them not look authentically African. And men do the same thing too. We're looking for the woman with the long weave all the way to her behind. That's what we're looking for. The lighter skin, the better for the black man. And if you can't get that, he's going all the way European on you. If he ain't European, he's going all the way Chinese or something. If you ask him, he'll tell you, well, the black woman is this and the black woman is that and the black woman is this. But you haven't stood on your own grounds as a black man and let the black woman know, I'm an African. If you want any part of this, you're going to have to go the same route. If you can't, I'm sorry. You got to set some kind of standard. You walk around here talking about, you need respect from the black woman, you need respect from the white man or whoever, but you're not acting in any way where respect for you is appropriate. You've turned your back. We have the Tinibus and all these crazy people running Africa now. And our heroes that try to do something, we turn around with the help of the foreign agents, kill our own leaders, like they did Thomas Sankara. Kwame Nkrumah was out doing a foreign trip and ended up in exile over there. We killed our own Patrice Lumumba. The CIA plotted his death, but it wasn't the CIA that put a gun to his head. It was us that did it. You understand what I'm saying? So without an appreciation of our ancestors, without an appreciation for ourselves, without love for our children, we're not going anywhere. This is an effort in futility. What do you think, Dr. Chidozie? Can you hear me?
Okay, I was thinking that Dibia Monet, we should go first.
Okay, go ahead, Dibia Monet. Let me hear your thoughts.
I think what you were saying is absolutely true. It's absolutely true when it comes to what we need to do for us. That's the main thing. No one will respect us if we're not respecting ourselves. We have to understand that. We're quick to say what the white man, the Chinese, everyone else is doing to us, but we are allowing it. So we have to understand that we have the power to stand and say no to whatever is offered to us. But the problem is, and it comes down to what I see, and I see it all around the world, it comes down to our identity, our low self-esteem as African people. It comes down to that. And so just like you were saying, it's our community is so sick. It's like, okay, the women are altering their natural beauty, their natural African beauty, not wanting to be as African, putting on hair of other cultures of women, the eyelashes, all of these things that we're doing. But part of that is to meet the beauty standard that is required of our African man, wanting to attract that African man. So our brothers, our fathers, our African man must change their mindset of what is beautiful in a woman. Yeah. Don't forget about your mother. It's unnatural. Most cultures of people, you'll notice, most men, you would think they would want to be with a woman or attract a woman that looks like their mother. Most men really love their mothers. And for so many men, African men, to not want someone that reflects your own mother. And when I say your mother, because a lot of the mothers are no longer wanting to be African or altering their features, to me, almost wearing costumes to look like something that they are not, altering their complexion, their beautiful black skin, lightening their black skin. So when that son sees that is what his standard of beauty will be. So I'll say that. But let's go further down when none of that was in existence. Our true African mother, the mothers that came before that, we have to learn to appreciate ourselves. We have to learn to love ourselves and as African people, and stop being so hard on the African woman. You know, the African woman, and I mean, there's probably many people that agree with me. You know, I hear the complaints from a lot of the brothers or the, you know, African brothers about how here in America and also, you know, the diaspora, about the negative things they say about the African woman. And these things, I'll see this on social media, you know. For instance, he's transcended, but there was an individual, Kevin Samuels. Now, my question was, you know, what another culture of a person, because I haven't seen it, would they sit there, would a white man sit there and just degrade the white woman? I haven't seen it to that extent, the way that we degrade. You know, I've seen men and even women have YouTube shows that are degrading the Black woman. You're pointing out all of the negative about the Black woman, but then not taking in consideration what we have to go through. Not taking, yes, the Black man goes through things, but the Black woman also goes through a lot of different things, not taking that in consideration. You know, so the Black woman, like here in America, a lot of opportunity for years since slavery was something weaponized against us, that they would give Black women more opportunity and the Black man less opportunity. So it's almost like the Black woman has to, you know, take care of the Black man. And so with the European concept as the man being the head of the household, that made the man feel as if he was inadequate in our families, but he simply just didn't have the opportunity. And because we had kind of a head start in opportunities, Black women are, you know, the head when it comes to education and everything like that. So a lot of Black women are making more money than the Black male, because we don't have as many Black males going to finish their education and things like that here in America. And so, you know, it's a lot of resentment that has been created. But if you think about that, you know, the history. So the Black woman, because they wouldn't give the Black male the opportunity, not only was she having to take care of her family, she was having to go out and work, you know, for the family also, because that opportunity was given to her and not to that Black male at periods of time. You know, so we have to look at our community. We have to look at what we're doing to each other, how we're downgrading each other. I hear a lot of people saying, oh, the Black woman this, or even when we say the Black, at one time it was Black men were dogs, you know, Black men were nothing to women. So now it's the other way around, and now Black women are not any good to the Black man. We have to heal that, and we have to come together as a people. It's not the fault of the Black male or the Black woman. It is a systematic issue that is still going on. Yes. That we don't have our own. We're eating out of the hands of everyone else. That is the issue. And then out of desperation, we're going to other races with our handouts still. Yeah. We're going to other races saying, well, you have what we need. Let me attach myself to this person. Some Black men wanting to go with white women because they're feeling like they're going to be awarded a better opportunity.
Yeah, whitewash yourself.
Not going to be able to give them.
Yeah. Well said, Dr. Simone. I appreciate that. That's really good. Right on. You're on point. Your thoughts, and then we'll conclude this show.
Yeah, Dr. Monet, once again, I drop my cap for you.
On fire.
Yeah, because we have more we have more women like you and
We'll be
Okedibia,
good.
Akachi Akuna, and a lot of that. Then our future is bright. Our
Yes,
future will be
indeed.
really bright. Well, let me just take on this. In addition to what Dibia Monet and Dibia Ude said so far, I would like to put in this. We must know one thing, that when the Europeans came here, they thought of the best way to colonize us. And they knew that the best way to colonize us was to destroy what made us to have a nucleus.
Yes.
And that's why they decided to head us together, so that we will be fighting tribal wars in the enclaves that they have created for us, Nigeria, Ghana, Cameroon, and so on and so forth. But it will take people of high wisdom, like those of us here, to see through this. One place they have done that is Rwanda. And you see that since they have been able to do that, they can forge ahead. They now know that they have to go, they have to stay in their ethnicity, but walk across. Ethnic groups have to connect themselves and build one common identity. And that's what we need to do. We need to destroy the colonial foundation. Now, the colonial foundation is that today they pretended that they created us and gave us independence, what we call the new states. And then there's this notion of the post-colonial. For me, the post-colonial is the most dangerous thing the African should take cognizance of. Because when you talk about the post-colonial, what you mean to say is that we began to exist from the moment we were handed independence by the European countries.
Yes.
And what has become a big problem for us is that our political, economic, intellectual, spiritual leaders think that to build the post-colonial, the pre-colonial has to be destroyed. Amika Cabra said that for the new Africa to be, the old Africa must die.
Yeah.
And then you hear the likes of William Abraham in The Mind of Africa talk about cultural essentialism. Let's take the essentials, the souls from our culture to build the new African countries. And so when I went to Ghana, I told them the Nkrumah's conscientism is also built on that, the whole program of conscientism. In fact, I have a book here, Disentangling Conscientism by Ode. And then one scholar there took on Nkrumah's conscientism. If you look at all the three foundations of conscientism, they are all based on Marxism, dialectical materialism, socialism, and one other one. Then the categorical conversion, based on the principles of Marxism. Then you look at Zik, Awo's democratic socialism, even the closest of them, Nyerere, Ujamaa, they all forgot the African spirituality. And that is the danger of the post-colonial. And so why they now started, they wanted to build a new Africa, and they started building a new physical Africa, building of dams and so on. So while they were doing that, the Asians, Indians, Chinese, were busy building their own civilizations inward. They were addressing their inward problem, identity problem, cultural problem. That's what they spent a decade to 2 decades building. So from the 1950s to the 70s, they were building inwards. We were building outwards. And then we started telling ourselves that we were ahead of Asia. But by the 80s, especially from the 80s, when they now began to call on their internal strength and began to develop themselves physically, according to their own pace, in their own terms, by the 90s, they overtook us. And so we now saw that we were not developing. So all the ideologies built in the post-colonial by our founding fathers, insofar as they were not built on African spirituality, like Casey Anyanwu said they were bound to fail, and all of them have crumbled because they cannot build Africa. And so, for us to move, we have to de-balkanize. And by de-balkanization, I mean that balkanization is the foundation of colonization. Colonization is the foundation of colonial. And the aim of balkanization is to destroy the soul of Africa, which is ethnicity. Because that made us to become orphans. And the orphans is that they will be backward looking always. They were always looking for their source instead of being forward looking. Now, Europeans have sorted this problem out after fighting wars for years. You can see that in Britain, where nation is based on ethnicity. England organizes has its own pounds, the pound sterling. Scotland has its own pounds, its own economy. They all relate. Same thing with Wales. Wales. Same thing with Northern Ireland. If you go to Switzerland, they practice the collegiate system. 6 ethnic groups, each one is in charge of his own affairs. You go to Canada, 2 huge sides, one English, one French. The English run their affairs in English. The French run their affairs in French. And presidency is rotational. And so one thing we can do in Africa, as we try in choosing to build a general umbrella for the black man Pan-Africanism, what we can do is to, henceforth, begin to create states or provinces or whatever we want to create based on ethnicity and rally around our ancient past. Let us give powers back to those who were dislodged, the Obis, the Obas, the Alafins, the Bales, the Indiche. Let us take power back to them. And those of us who have been to school become their CEOs. Once we do this, we will find a nucleus to rally around on. Once we take power back to the Indiche, we take power back to the Oba, then it means that that is the culture, that's our identity.
Absolutely.
And before long, the states or the provinces will start talking about using their own languages. It means that each province or each state will also use its own language. Then our languages can stop being vernaculars. For now, insofar as we're Nigeria, and then we don't have, we're talking about a unitary Nigeria, not a truly federated Nigeria, a truly federated Ghana, a unitary Ghana. Then English become our lingua franca, our language will be vernacular, and as so long our languages begin to play second fiddles, our spirituality will continue to play second fiddles, everything about us will be relegated to the background. And so, we want to search forward, we should reenact and put in its own vantage point what the colonialists have destroyed. Because if you look at it, there is no Nigerian culture. There is no Ghanaian culture. If you want to know Nigerian culture, you have to go to the individual ethnic groups, and then we begin to bring them together. And so for us to bring them together, we know how to potentially present them politically. Let us do that with all sincerity. And when we do so, then we'll be forward-looking, knowing that we are already within our identity. Each one will start building bridges across. And that we will now have both the foundation and Pan-Africanism, the roof, and everything will gel. That's my little
beautiful stuff. Beautiful, 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 beautiful. I'm so excited. I've been, I have learned. I've always considered myself, how do you say, a wealth of information. But every time I listen to Dr. Monet and Dibia Chidios here, I feel enriched even more. And I just want to touch on something real quick before we conclude. Pan-Africanism was an attempt to create a sense of brotherhood and collaboration amongst all people of African ancestry or descent, you know, whether they live outside of Africa or they live inside of Africa. And this is a journey that we must continue. And we can only make that possible by creating institutions that stress that, right? We must have institutions that stress that, because we understand that your best defense against imperialism is your religion and your culture. And your religion is your foundation. because all human systems are products of religion, economic, cultural, civic, what have you. They all stem from religion. So we must understand that. We must understand that we are responsible for our future. Nobody can do it for us but us. But it starts with an appreciation of ourselves in the hopes of one day we will be able to create leadership that has the interest of our children in the forefront. And with that, thank you all for joining us, and we will see you next week. Yagazie.
Yagazie.